Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. Today I am talking with Travis Moore from Jemco Inc. Near Seattle, Washington. Jemco is about a 100-person team serving a wide variety of industries, including aerospace and defense. And Travis and I get really into some great topics regarding the way they value their team just at such an incredible level, and they support them, building a strong and flexible company. The importance of core values that comes up in kind of in a surprising way, but it's a great episode. Travis is wise beyond his years, so I really hope you enjoy this talk with Travis Moore from Jemco. Travis, hello, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun conversation, knowing what I know of Jemco. So let's start by getting to know you and your shop a little bit better. So tell me some of the history.
Yeah, we're about a 40-year-old company. Actually started by my parents. And I grew up in the business. My brother and I, a lot of machine shops were started in the garage, and our first machine was actually in the kitchen. We were doing assembly work. We had a big compressor. And so I grew up, eating my cereal before school, making parts, and the compressor would go off and you'd miss episodes of different sections of your cartoons as a kid. Yeah, awesome. It's not your garage shop, but the kitchen. Started in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So
very cool. And and so you said 40 years. So what is that? Early 80s?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does the company look like today?
So today we've got about 100 team members, around 70,000 square feet, mm-hmm. and right around 20 million, I'd say.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun, a lot of headaches, but get to be part of a lot of neat projects. So
yeah. And based on the picture in the back, sounds like you guys, and I know you're AS certified, so primarily aerospace defense, or what industries else besides that?
We're really lucky to be diverse, especially compared to a lot of shops in the Northwest, where, of course, we do some commercial aviation, but we still do a significant amount of marine work, medical work, and now a lot in the space and defense realm. So yeah, I think behind there's a little bit of some of our defense projects.
Yeah, that's a big part to your right there.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Is that all machined? Or is that?
So one of the unique things that Jemco does is we do a ton of machining, but we also do a lot of sheet metal fabrication. So for us, one of the niches has really become kind of being able to do sheet metal and machining in-house and having these hybrid parts and packages. And it's kind of lent itself to a unique fit and for a variety of customers.
Yeah, being that one-stop shop can be pretty important.
Yeah.
When buyers want to have a solution, they love you for one commodity and they just wish they could buy other commodities from you. And so when they can, that's a win-win right there.
Yeah, we're seeing that segment grow, whereas before you'd have a lot of machining parts and a lot of sheet metal parts, and then a small chunk in the middle of hybrid. And it's that hybrid aspect is growing, which is fun and creates new headaches, more challenges trying to mate up larger and larger assemblies. It started out with parts that you could hold in your hand, and then parts that we'd say, maybe briefcase, then trunk of your car, and this one doesn't fit in the trunk of the car even.
Not most cars, no.
Yeah, right.
That's cool. So you said when you're starting out in the kitchen, assembly work. So was it a machine shop first of all, or was it more just an assembly house and then you added machining later? Or what's that story
good point.
look like?
We got into the business really as an assembly house. And so we were sourcing from machine shops or sheet metal fabricators, and just gradually kind of grew the supply chain vertically. So it's been kind of fun to see the trajectory over the decades, and then also charting out the future trajectory, trying to see, hey, as we grow, what percentage of the time and money do we want to invest in things that we're good at, and what percentage of our time and money do we want to invest in stretching our capabilities. We just are slowly forming a emerging technologies committee here, so we can kind of try to challenge ourselves and learn with each project we take.
I definitely want to come back to that a little bit later. So was the decision to get in machining because the suppliers you were buying machine parts from were not performing well enough and you wanted to take things into your own hands and have full control of the process, or how did that decision come about?
Yeah, probably a equal parts, cost driven and control of schedule. I was honestly too young to remember those times, but I feel like we continue to make that decision over and over as we add equipment. You're kind of saying, boy, we could outsource this, or we could take on more debt and buy another machine. And so as we buy machines, we also try to make sure we manage the buy versus build in-house competing constraint, you know?
Sure. Of course.
Yeah.
So, what, I guess I'd love to talk a little bit about some of sort of the growth path, right? So, when your dad first, brought some CNC, did he start with CNC equipment when he started doing machining, or was it manual?
Yeah, it was actually CNC. Yep, CNC equipment was our first equipment. We do have some a manual mill, manual lathe here now, but that was definitely
CNC right off the bat. Yeah,
right.
And was that like a vertical mill type of thing, probably, or a lathe?
We had a vertical mill, a horizontal, and a lathe, and a large punch press.
Okay,
so,
right.
Yep, that was a big risk back in the day, because you a lot of folks would pick, are you in sheet metal business or are you machining? And so it was kind of risky to try to do both. And I think we definitely took it on the chin for quite a few years before being able to make money in both of those realms.
Was that, was the sheet metal side just didn't have quite enough demand to keep that machine busy, or?
Yeah, it lends itself to higher quantities, and so you can bang out so many parts so fast, but then it might sit for not just a day, but a week or a month, And so the goal obviously is to keep it humming, but it's punches parts out so fast, it's hard to keep it running all the time.
For sure.
Compared to a mill where you can kind of have a 1 hour runtime or a 3 hour runtime and load it with the green button.
So what does that makeup of equipment look like today? Have you leaned heavily into horizontals, 5-axis, still a lot of verticals, or?
Yeah, great question. So kind of going back to how do we split up our investment into things we're doing well currently and things we want to get good at. We've still invested in a little bit more horizontal, but mostly vertical. And what that looks like on the sheet metal side is, we picked up a laser, picked up a couple brakes, and now we're looking at other things like hydroforming or metal spinning and saying, hey, at what point is it stupid to get into something you don't know? And at what point is it a wise strategy to start learning it now?
Great conversation. What do those conversations look like?
And 3D printing should be added, right, to that
for sure.
conundrum.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's definitely an ongoing conversation. And especially as you look at, most machine shops right now, I think, are pretty full with work. And gosh, why would you ever not invest in something that you can find work for? Well, I would argue we have to be thinking not just about 3 months down the road, but 3 years down the road. And as these cycles go up and down over the decades, how do we put ourselves in a position to be successful 3 years down the road and not just invest money for the future, but learn for the future?
Mm-hmm.
Space for us was one of those areas that there was a great argument to be made that, hey, space parts are too technical, too complex, too exotic, and it doesn't fit in well with commercial aviation. And so you could argue that's a reason not to do it. But our philosophy here was, hey, if it's difficult, it's more difficult to send overseas. So why don't we figure out now how to do it while we have some money and we have some runway and a book of business? Let's innovate and iterate, make mistakes so that should commercial aviation ever have a slowdown, we're tooled up. We've already spun up this other niche industry sector. And so it thankfully during the pandemic, space work was able to kind of carry us through the downturn.
Right. And so with that specifically, did you have some space customers that were, doing a small amount of work for, and you saw the opportunity to provide them with more bandwidth, more capacity? Or is it something you decided, let's go ahead and go find customers, just go knock on doors, cold call, however you network?
Yeah, we were very, very proactive in saying, let's go knock on doors, let's cold call, let's get our hands on some drawings. And I would say we were tenacious in pursuing that. Once we were all on the same page that was a headache we were willing to take a risk on.
Mm-hmm. So that is a skill set that I think not enough shops have, is being that sort of sales driven, go out, find, knock on doors, find out how to connect with buyers, engineers. How do you guys go about doing that?
So for me, it's a variety, and it kind of goes into culture and our ethos. Is there's a great Einstein quote that says, in the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. And so for me, we wanted to seek out challenges, and instead of doing sales calls, it was more so just doing a lot of listening and seeing what are these companies needing, what are their biggest bottlenecks, and making sure that we were available with solutions. So it involved a little bit of everything between trade shows, career fairs, social media, talking to vendors, and really just having a heart-to-heart with the customer. Having that collaboration kind of propel the relationship.
Yeah.
Simple conversation.
So if you got some introduction, some foot in the door, you'd try to connect with those buyers and just find out what problems they're having, what solutions they don't have today.
Totally. What vendors aren't performing? What's the parts that come across your desk that are the most difficult to source? If you had a magic wand, what would you use it for as it relates to your supply chain? Questions like that. Yeah, questions like that. They love it. If they can make one problem go away today, what would that be? And it kind of puts us in the position to be that solution. Well,
they say the best salespeople listen more than talk. So asking a probing question like that, really being focused on their needs, not, hey, we have these fancy machines, we can make all sorts of really fancy parts. Right. That sounds like a smart approach.
Yeah. Thanks.
Let's see here. Tell me about, have you guys always been in the same facility, or have you had to move over the years?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask. So we're in the same neighborhood that once we got out of the house, it was probably a solid 15 years running out of the house.
So did you have like a garage shop in the back where you had your machines?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yep. We're kind of all over. And I remember coming home, getting off the school bus as a kid, and there'd be so many UPS boxes in front of the door. You couldn't even see the door. You'd literally have to remove the boxes just to get into the house. Um,
Wow. So it
yeah,
really was run out of the house,
yeah.
legitimately.
Then we rented in just a little strip mall type industrial park
Mm-hmm.
situation for a good uh, 10 years, and just in the last 15 years have really been able to buy buildings and
Right.
have a little bit more control and staying power. So we've been in these same buildings for about 15 years. We're right now on a campus of two buildings. The dream is someday to get into one large state of the art facility, and
Sure.
hopefully that day's coming soon.
Well, I know you guys are in the sort of east side of Seattle, and real estate is at a premium
Yeah.
in that area. So
Yep.
no small task, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
the good news is that it's very centrally located, so it's been
Hmm.
great for recruiting team members.
Oh, yeah.
The bad news is it is expensive, and it's difficult for anybody to afford to live close to the shop. And so, um, my hope is that we're going to be able to move a lot closer to where we all live, to
Yeah.
save on commute time and gas.
Oh, okay. So a little further out,
That's
perhaps.
right. Yep, you got
Okay.
it.
So you mentioned easy to recruit team members. I know being in that general area, there's the big guys like Boeing and others that
Hmm.
can often suck up a lot of machinists and afford to pay better wages. And
Hmm.
how have you guys attracted your employees over the years and kept them?
We are very lucky to have solid relationships with the trade schools.
Okay.
So, a lot of whether it's uh, Lake Washington Tech or Shoreline Community College, uh, both have great machining technology programs. Partnering with organizations like AJAC has been critical to our success, and really just trying to collaborate um, with the community
Mm-hmm.
and making sure the youth of today understand the value of learning a trade, and it's really paid off for us, and it's paid off for them as well, most importantly.
Mm-hmm. How do you engage with those programs?
A lot of volunteer hours. We try to invest in them and support them financially.
The machining program
The,
specifically, you mean?
right, the machine programs, and really just supporting their education. So a lot of these kids are going to school, and that's their only exposure to industry. And so we host tours and bring them through and kind of tell them the pros and cons of working in a machine shop, and specifically
Mm-hmm.
working at Jemco, and what does a day in the life of a machinist here look like, and what's important to us as far as traits that we're looking for besides technical acumen. What are some personality traits or work ethic type components to performing well in the job? And
Mm-hmm.
it's been super helpful.
And so I imagine you have pretty good relationships with the instructors of those programs.
Yeah, the instructors have been great. Man, we've had some of the
Yeah.
instructors work here during the
Oh, yeah.
summertime, and yeah, and it's great to learn from them, and they've helped us tremendously.
So I would imagine, because this was our experience, we were quite well connected with Bellingham Technical College up here,
Yeah,
and we actually had two employees always on their advisory board, right? So just perpetually for years, and
smart.
so not only help them evolve and mature the program to be teaching things that are more modern and relevant
Hmm.
to shops, but yeah, every year we basically got to choose the cream of the crop, right? And I imagine that's the same with you. Like you're now having relationships with the teachers, the students, and they're like, yeah, these three students are the best. Um,
We're very
Definitely.
lucky. Yeah, they've been very good to us, and it was hard with COVID. The programs were nearly shut down, and we
Mm-hmm.
lost a couple years there of talent. And one of the exciting things about coming out of the pandemic is not only been the workload that's come, but also the conversations with Shoreline and Lake Washington Tech. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so is it the case then you have a relatively young demographic in your shop?
I would say one of our keys to success has just been a very diverse workforce.
Okay.
So both in background and in age. So one of the things that I think makes us unique is being able to apply business principles from the restaurant industry to manufacturing, or from real estate to manufacturing. And I can speak for myself specifically. So even though I grew up in the business, I left and went to corporate America for 15 years. And I came back about 6 years ago, and it was a blessing and a curse to not have experienced Jemco those 15 years, because I was able to ask questions. I was able to be ignorant about something and approach it from an entirely different angle. For me, I was just trying to learn, but I was actually able to be innovative in the process, because I wasn't stuck in a rut. I didn't, this whole concept, oh, we've always done it that way. For me, it's, I don't care the way we've always done it. What's the best way? How would McDonald's approach this problem? How would Microsoft approach this problem?
Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah. So I'd love to dig in a little bit about maybe the differences. Presume are your parents still active in the business?
Yeah, they are. Mom's here many days, and so is dad. And it's funny, when I first started back 6 years ago, I was thinking, 2 or 3 years, they'll probably retire, and they're still here, and I'm glad they haven't retired yet. I learned so much from them every day, and I hope they never retire. So I can't imagine not having them here.
At least they'll be on your speed dial when you need to answer a question.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'd love to maybe talk a little bit about, if you can, the differences between maybe the way your parents ran the business and how you're now running the business today.
Yeah, that's
from a cultural perspective, or whatever, perspective. Sure. Makes sense.
Well, I love the quote that says, "What got you here won't keep you here." And so there is tons of style differences and strategic differences between the way we operate. But I would say that it's important to me to maintain continuity. Mm-hmm. And just because we're changing certain things, it's not a me versus them. It really is the DNA of the business is changing as we evolve, and our methodologies and strategies have to evolve as well. So something that's super important to me is culture and respect. And you might have heard it said that machine shops are old school and dirty and dangerous, and machinists are rough around the edges. And that is what I experienced 6 years ago. But I challenged that status quo. I challenged those assumptions, and sought to find machinists that were respectful to one another. And we've done that. And right. I'm proud to say, like, our team they're my family. I love them. I care about their career goals. I care about their families. And I think we have been able to accomplish our goals because we've prioritized their career goals. Mm-hmm. and we've prioritized our customers' career goals, and we've prioritized our vendors' goals. And I think that type of mindset is something that we could not afford to have in the past. We really were on, it was lean. Those were lean years. A funny story is I had a machinist once tell me, "Hey, I can't make it to work on Monday. I crashed my car. My race car is my work car, and I crashed it over the weekend, so I can't come in on Monday." And I'm like, man, in the 2008 economic crisis, we all took the bus,
Right.
We couldn't afford to put tires on the car, so we bought a bus pass, and we took the bus for 2 years to get to work. So right. This notion of like, oh, I crashed my car, like, that doesn't fly. We can't tell our customers, Billy Joe couldn't make it in because he crashed his race car on Sunday, and now he has no way to get to work. Get a bicycle, get a scooter, phone a friend, take a cab,
Right.
So I think I guess that's a good example of new school. Some of today's youth, they haven't lived through hard times. And so they don't have that grit, that tenacity that my parents'
Hmm.
generation had.
Yeah. Yeah. So 100 is a pretty big shop. You run in multiple shifts?
We currently, for a while, we were running 4 shifts. Now we're running 3 now because I think we're getting just as much done as we did with 4. And we had a
Hmm.
unhealthy amount of overlap. And the strategy was always we started a weekend shift. And in order to do that, we still kept our 3 regular shifts, the morning, the evening, and the night shift, and then added the
Mm.
weekend. And then what we did is we phased out the night shift. And now we have
Okay.
basically a morning shift and a evening shift and a weekend shift. So
Okay.
went from 5/8s to 4/10s when
Yep.
we did all that. And it's been great. Not
Yeah.
easy, but it's been great. Great change.
Yeah. Tell me some of the challenges you guys faced adding extra shifts. I mean, obviously, even though I've talked to many shops, going from one shift to multiples is a huge learning curve, right?
Huge
Because,
learning curve. Yep.
yeah, support staff from the office isn't there all the time. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Security issues, right? Like now you've got random doors unlocked at random times of the day. Um, you've got safety issues if you've only got 1 or 2 people working and someone's out sick and then you end up with someone all alone, which you don't want.
Hmm.
Um, those So adding shifts for us, and I can speak as mostly a prototype shop. We do a fair amount of production, but mostly because we do the prototype work, and then it gives us an advantage on the production side of things.
Hmm.
But uh, communication is so critical no matter what, but especially when you have multiple shifts, right? Because you're tying in, and the more complex the parts, the more complex the tie-in notes need to be, and we've gone through times where it's like, well, for that reason, we need to do a verbal tie-in. And then you
Mm.
could argue, well, actually, when you have verbal tie-ins, you get people doing this. It was their fault. And so
Right.
now we've gone full circle into doing written tie-ins. So we have more clarity, more detail, and more accountability. Um,
Hmm.
so that's just one example of kind of the learning curve for us. But it's been great for team members because not everybody's a morning person, and there's folks that have never considered weekend shift that they're like, oh, I like to hike, so I want to hike on the weekends is when we do all the hiking, and then they realize, well, the parking lots are all crowded at the great hiking places on the weekend, so man, maybe I should work weekend shift and I can have a place to park, and not only that, I get a 4-day weekend every week, and so now
Yeah.
they can go to further destinations to do their hiking, and uh, it's really added to quality of life for everybody on every shift.
Yeah. And are you obviously, so probably the 312s get paid for 40 kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So we do essentially like a 10% differential
Okay.
instead of just automatically paying for 40.
Hmm.
We just pay the differential. That way, if they want to do overtime or they can't
Right.
make it in one of those days,
Sure.
you're not just throwing random 4 hours
Right.
out there, but essentially giving them a way to make up the lost money.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So, one of the things that some of my prior guests have really focused on as being a really important thing for them and their growth is identifying core values and
Hmm.
really letting those values drive decision making and hiring and even working with customers. Is that something
Hmm.
you guys have done?
Yeah, that's hilarious. And to your credit, you didn't mention that. I brought our core values because they're
Oh,
that
did you
important.
really?
Yeah, and you didn't even prep me on that. You just randomly asked
Yes.
that question, and that's like the one thing I brought with me is our core values, and
Wow.
I think that's telling about how important they are. The way I got here 6 years ago is the company was really struggling with one of their leaders, and they were asking my advice. And I was living in the Midwest, so I was on the phone driving between Missouri and Illinois, and in the 8-hour car ride, and I said, all these questions you're asking about how to handle this situation is very complex if you don't have core values. If you have core values, all these decisions, all these conversations get very easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, while I was driving, uh, put a lot of time and energy into thinking, if it was my shop, what would the core values be and why? And I kind of shot them an email and proposed these core values, and they've adopted them. But they're kind of living, breathing core values. So it can't just be, hey, these are the Moore's core values or this is Travis's core values. It's got to be a team effort, and they've evolved over the years. I would say our best core values have been um, brought to us by the team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, two of them that I'd love to mention was craftsmanship. Craftsmanship's a core value here, and it drives the review process, it drives the hiring process, and it drives who we are and what we strive to be. And courtesy is another one. So
Mm-hmm.
being courteous to one another, again, it drives the hiring process, it drives the review process, who we are and who we want to be. And, you know, discrimination gets a bad rap. Discrimination for the wrong things is a bad thing. But you want to discriminate if you're building something like an organization. There's certain things like laziness isn't good for the organization. You have to discriminate and say, if you're going to be lazy, the ship will sink. And we love the team on this ship. So we have to discriminate and say, if you're lazy, if you are disrespectful, you can't be part of this group. And my job, I've taken upon myself I'll try to help them find a job elsewhere. Like if
Mm-hmm.
they don't treat people with respect, hey, I'll coach you on that. And I can try to find you a job where you're not working with others while you develop this skill set. Or if you're lazy, here's a book you can read. And here's a company where you can uh, maybe be successful, but it's not going to be here, and I'm able to have a frank conversation with them. And I always love to bring up that um, I'm good at transitioning people out of Jemco because I myself have been fired from a job, and it was a eye-opening experience. And it was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. And for that reason, I'm able to bring that experience to Jemco and help our team get better. And most of them are able to stay at Jemco and some of them aren't. But we've had to let people go here, and then we've rehired them after a season. It might be 3 weeks or it might be 3 years, but we're open to bringing them back if they're able to uh, see the folly or just see the disconnect. It doesn't have to be folly. That's probably too harsh of a word, but there has to be a cultural fit, and
Mm-hmm.
helping them understand our perspective on that it's been rewarding. And I think it's been helpful to us and to our team.
That's very interesting. So you must have a strong belief in don't burn bridges, I would
Yeah. Don't
imagine.
burn bridges. Right. Yeah.
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 I mean,
That's
the fact, yeah, I mean, that's
true.
telling that if you have employees that would want to come back and work for you once they matured or once something, got corrected in their
Yeah.
situation, that that's very telling that
Yeah. And
you must have a,
we had a policy here where we wouldn't rehire. And that was one of the things. And there's a reason to have that kind of a policy. And you could argue that it's a good policy, but for many reasons, I said, man, I want to challenge that process or that policy we have. And here's why. And it's been very beneficial. It might just be someone wants to go try to see if the grass is greener on the other side. And I can't tell you how many people call back within 3 months. And most of the time we welcome them back with open arms because to me, somebody that has thought the grass was greener on the other side but realized it's not, that's a great team member to have, because what they do is they help me coach other team members that are thinking of leaving and says, yeah, be careful. I know you think you've had a hard day here, but let me tell you my story when I left and how bad it could be elsewhere.
mm-hmm.
So
That's very interesting.
yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about your just sort of your org structure, with
Mhm.
100 people, how many direct reports do you have? How many do you have shift leads? Do you have operations people? How do you kind of structure a 100-person machine shop effectively?
Yeah, great question. So we've got 7 different departments, and
Okay.
each department has 1 or 2, sometimes 3 leads, depending on which department it is. And some departments even have 2 leads per shift. So
Okay.
I would say that our core values are living, breathing. It's a living, breathing document, and so is our structure. We have a very fluid structure because uh, customers' needs are always changing, and we want to make sure we can adapt.
Hmm.
So, for better and for worse, we have a very loose structure, and I'd say we're in our specific situation, it's for the worse. And so, one of my initiatives this year has been to really um, button down that structure for the sake of clarity and accountability and really peace of mind, right? So we're not duplicating efforts and being inefficient or confusing people.
Hmm.
But,
Hmm. And so you mentioned reviews. So
mhm.
every company does reviews. Do you do those on an annual basis more frequently? Do you do like one-on-one meetings with people?
That's
How
a
do you
great
think about,
question.
yeah, how do you think about connecting?
Yeah. So I always joke that like everybody says, "Hey, do you think I can have a review?" And what they really mean, can I have a raise? It's used synonymously with raise. And so for me, I try to really separate the two,
Yeah.
which isn't easily done, but we've managed to do it to a degree here. And our philosophy on reviews is that we attempt to do them annually, and especially around the holidays. So it's kind of a time where things slow down and people, myself included, you start to think about your career path. Like, am I working where I want to work? Am I doing the job I want to do? And so for me, it's about having regular conversations. And I think a cadence of about 2 to 3 times a year is a good time for that. So the third time, if it's not their anniversary or around the holidays, usually it's as we're shifting. It might be someone resigning or we're growing, and so we promote someone that is conducive to those conversations. And so, oftentimes, we're really lucky to be right here on the Kirkland corridor trail, and so we'll go for a
Hmm.
walk on the trail, 5 minute walk or a 10 minute walk, and it usually has to do with starts with, hey, what are your career goals? And my job as the president is to really align their career goals with our goals. And it sometimes is a series of conversations and could take as long as a week or a month to kind of flesh
Hmm.
out, but it's really helped our retention. And I think about a business as kind of like a human body. You want to be strong, but strength isn't as helpful if you don't have flexibility. And
Hmm.
flexibility is not helpful if you don't have strength. And so when you promote within and you cross promote, you build this organization that is both strong and flexible because you've got all these shared skills. And it's been wonderful for Jemco, for our customers, and most importantly for our team as they kind of chart their career path. They know that we're
Hmm.
an open book, and uh, we love that conversation.
I love that. So do you have those conversations? What are your career goals with machinists, or are those done by the leads in those departments?
Um, I am typically the one having that conversation, and it would be
Okay.
my hope that the leads are also having that conversation. I probably don't do a good enough job promoting that. You
Hmm.
know, some of them they would say they're interested in that conversation with their team, and
Yeah.
some would say they're good at it. But I think a lot of them, it's not their favorite conversation to have. And they
Sure.
might even say they're not good at it. And to that, I say, no problem. I love that conversation. And some people say I'm good at it. So uh,
So
let's,
would you say that most people in your company say that you're accessible? They could come talk to you if they want to?
I sure would hope so. I would say most. Yeah. There's always a few that like, that might say I'm not. And I think for that, I've just we can never do a good enough job with our messaging. One thing I haven't done that I want to do is put my cell phone number on my office door. But I tell them during orientation, the most important part of orientation is call me, text me, email me, questions, comments, concerns, anytime, day or night, weekends, holidays, you name it. We are a great company, but it's because our team shares and speaks up and asks questions when there's ambiguity. And so I'd like to think I'm accessible and that they would say I'm accessible, but I know well enough that I'm still not doing a good enough job promoting that and with that message. So I would think 80 to 90% would say I'm accessible.
I love that idea of putting your cell phone number right on your door.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a message. That's just a great message that you're living it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not here as much as we're growing. I'm spending more time with vendors and with customers and looking at new sites and meeting with great folks like yourself. And so they need to know that I've got a lot on my plate and I've got 4 kids and my 4 kids are important to me and family's important to me, my wife and their activities. And it's a great way for me to let them know, hey, I might be off site, but I'm available. Call me, text me. And I want them to know that their family is important to Jemco and that if their kid has a field trip, yes, they should be there. If their kid has a conversation with a teacher, conferences, parent-teacher conferences, be there.
Sure.
We want you here, but when you're here, I want you to be focused on your job. And if you're missing something important at home, you're not going to be able to focus on if you're missing something at home, you're not going to be able to focus on your job. So we try to really support our team's life outside of work.
That's brilliant. Love it, man. Nicely done.
Well, thanks.
So when you kind of think back on the 40 years of Jemco, can you pinpoint, a handful of just like really key decisions that were made about doing this, buying that piece of equipment, going into this direction? I mean, obviously the fact that you do machining and sheet metal, that was a big decision. Any other sort of best strategic moves you could think back on?
I think that's a great opportunity to credit my dad with, the way he's built this company is leveraging the talent and goals of the team. And so if our team wants to zig and we want to zag, we'll zig with the team. It's not the Moore family show. It's where's the team's talents and passions? Let's go that way. So he, for better or for worse, doesn't have a lot of defined goals. He wants to do great things and do them well. And if the team wants to go a particular direction, that's where we go. And I think that culture here has really been critical to our success. And I think more recently, it's just that win-win-win mindset. It's easy in business to be successful if you're overly opportunistic or exploit your vendors or your customers or your team. And for me, I don't want short-term growth. I want sustainable growth. And I think we've been successful at that because we genuinely take our customers and vendors' interests into account and our team's interests into account as we make decisions. And we have difficult conversations trying to find the win-win-win versus just being content with a win-lose situation.
Sure.
So it takes longer and there's a little bit more blood, sweat, and tears involved on the short term, but in the long term, you sleep better at night. And to me, that's what it's all about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Love it. So you mentioned being fairly diversified before. Do you have any sort of guidelines about how big you let any one industry or customer become before you try to grow other areas? Or
we don't have any hard, steadfast rules, although as we grow, I would say that we become more and more aware of the danger of having one or two big customers. You know, we
Mhm.
sadly see it every day being in Boeing's backyard.
Sure.
Everyone always says, "Oh, I bet you do a lot of work for Boeing." We're like, "Nope, really don't do much work at all for Boeing," and I think that's why we're still in business, sadly to say. But as I say that, I think it's important to point out, I think Boeing has learned from their past, and I don't see it. Kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with not exploiting your vendors or your customers. Like, for me to beat up a vendor on price, I might win today, but I'll probably lose that vendor. Like, they're only one good customer away from kicking me to the curb. So I
Sure.
want to have a win-win. If it's not a win for our vendors, long term, that's a lose. And so I think Boeing is starting to see that as their customers are either going out of business or telling them, yeah, I think we'd rather stay small. We don't really want this work. And so for us, we've been very, very strategic about who we partner with and how much work we take from them. And
Mhm.
the customers have been absolutely great, super flexible and understanding of that. And
Right.
I feel so fortunate to be in this industry.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I met, literally by many standards, we're competitors, but there's so much work out there, and
Mhm.
the just, I know this is not a pro shop podcast, but learning about your guys' ERP software and you've put me in touch with these other leaders in the industry. They're an open book. They're so kind, so friendly, so knowledgeable. Um, it's really a team mentality, and we're all in this together, which is why I'm excited about your
Mhm.
podcast and to be part of this industry. I'm just
Yeah.
very grateful.
Yeah. When I put together the little trailer for this podcast, I, I went through many variations of it, but I ended up talking about just how much this industry feels like a big family.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, everyone is so supportive. It blows me away. I'm in some of these, forums and things on, like a machinist forum, right? And
Mm-hmm.
someone will post a question. Hey, I'm having trouble with this type of thing. This tool keeps breaking, or I can't figure this out. And there'll literally be like 100 people that answer that question in a couple hours.
Isn't that
They're just
cool?
like, they're tripping over themselves to help other people. And I
I
just
love
don't
it.
see that in other places. And I
No,
think
you really don't.
there's like a shared, and I use the word brotherhood and sisterhood of people that,
Mm-hmm.
like, we all know how tough the manufacturing and machining business is. So we don't all want to do it alone, and
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like, the rising tide lifts all boats kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentality. I really think that's strong in the machine shop industry.
Yeah. Yep. So super lucky to be part of it and
Yeah.
working with you all these years.
So I wanted to ask you about financial transparency with your team.
Mm-hmm.
Back in our Pro CNC days, we would have monthly staff meetings, all hand meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd try to. It was difficult. We had the same shift schedule that you have. We had a day
Mm-hmm.
shift, a night shift, and a weekend shift. Um, and so we always did it like there was a little bit of overlap between days and nights, and then we'd record everyone. So sometimes the weekend guys might come in for a little bit or something, or or they just watch the recording. But we were pretty transparent. We shared what our revenues were. We shared whether we lost money or made profit that month. We looked at jobs that were winners and losers, and um, fairly transparent. And we thought that
Mm-hmm.
was important. Some shop owners, they won't even share what the price is of a part. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
lock down everything related to dollars.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys think about that?
I think, we're in a position now. There's a great uh, book called The Great Game of Business. And for me, you hear about whether it's fitness or finances, everyone wants to gamify it, like turn it into a
Mm-hmm.
game. And I love that because our team, if you assume positive intent, which we do, uh, people want to do well. And if you don't give them a scoreboard, how do they know if they're doing well? And so before I got here, we did not post anything. We didn't really even have goals. And so I said, man, what we need to feel good about ourselves at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month, or even just to strategize. We don't know if we're winning or losing. So by having a daily goal and a weekly goal and a monthly goal and reporting our progress on that, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to get some more ideas, and people will know if we won or we lost. And so we started doing that about 5 years ago. And I think that speaks to the transparency, and people have fun with it. You know, there's a lot of, we stretch when we need to stretch, and we celebrate when we need to celebrate. And I think that's, to your point, the value of someone that's willing to embrace transparency. And I could argue, give you 10 reasons why you wouldn't want to be transparent, but I believe if you give your team the benefit of the doubt and you assume positive intent, transparency is definitely the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that term, assume positive intent. It's like a big differentiator.
Yeah.
If you do or you don't, kind of in life.
Yeah, that came from a team member. She's no longer here, but she's also the one that came up with the core value of courtesy. And I still love giving her the credit for that, because again, if we're only as strong or as smart as one or two or three people, that's not sustainable and that's not healthy. But our team contributes so much, and I get the privilege of being the president and coming on great shows like this and sharing those values or terms. But it's thanks to our team that I'm able to do that.
I would love for you to share the rest of your core values besides craftsmanship and courtesy.
Sure. They're super cheesy. They all start with a C.
Okay.
But as we charted them out, most of them started with a C, and they all had easy pivots to a C. So they make them a lot easier to remember.
Sure. Yeah. That's important.
And we've also defined them super succinctly, because they can get convoluted if you're not careful. But you probably can't read them. But courage is to be bold. Character, be honest. Courtesy, be respectful. Commitment, be all in. Creativity, be a problem solver. Consistency, be dependable. Collaboration, be a team player. Coachability, be humble. Cautious, be careful. So instead of saying safety is a core value, which it is, we chose cautious. You know, it's, but yeah, that. What you don't see on here is you don't see, ironically, the two new ones that were brought by team members. This is an older version.
Okay.
This is a year old. So it's craftsmanship and courtesy. That's not on here. I usually keep it in a frame. It's not in a frame because I'm printing off the new one to reframe it. But some people would say, oh, that's a lot of core values. You should keep them at 4 or 5. And I'd say, oh, well, we got 10 of them or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I think we keep them simple enough that it's
okay. No, I love those definitions being 2 or 3 words long, you know?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks for asking.
What are the biggest challenges you are facing today?
Oh man, I would say sustainable growth. You know, we're all busy right now, which is so great, and it's dangerous, right? Because you can hire too quick, you can buy machines too quick. Behind every growth is some tapering off of that business. And so I think making sure we don't grow too fast or too chaotically. And people, right? Everyone says we need great people. We're trying to develop a mentorship program. I created something called Jemco Brew and You, where we get together with our team, and they can meet me at the coffee shop or at the brewery and talk about their career goals and what ideas they have for the future. Because we almost lost somebody from the production floor that said he wanted to get into an office environment, and we didn't know how serious he was about it until the day he resigned. And I was like, wow, I was oblivious. Please forgive me. And we were able to keep him, and he now works in the office for us, and he just crushes it. But based on that experience, we created Jemco Brew and You to make sure that we're retaining people, and that helps with recruitment. All of our great people we've gotten through referrals from our current team. So,
yeah. So does that brew in you? Is that just a one-on-one with you, or is that small groups get-togethers?
It's both. So I post up at the local coffee shop for 3 hours on a Sunday, and then after the coffee shop, I head over to the brewery, and so they can come grab me one-on-one. Oftentimes it's small groups, but it's really a time dedicated to them. It's off the clock. Most of everything else we do on the clock. Like we train them, we pay them to train, and they're on the clock for everything. But we don't pay them because it's all about them and their career growth. And they can ask questions like, hey, what's Jemco's thoughts on this? Is Jemco going to go do that? I heard a rumor about this. And it's really where they can chart their career path and be selfish with the questions they are asking, and confirming there's alignment or creating alignment with their career path. And sometimes there's not alignment, but that's okay too. Their goals, our team's goals, are very important to me, even if it means they have to leave Jemco to accomplish it.
Right.
We have a very long-term mindset on those issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a friend who has a small manufacturing business, and he will pay employees to leave if they want to. He'll give him like $1,000 or something.
Yeah. Tony Shea did that at Zappa's, and
right.
I can picture us doing that at some point. We haven't adopted that yet, but it's a cool concept.
Mm-hmm. So I want to dig into this brew in you a little more. So for 6 hours every Sunday.
Not every Sunday.
Or once a month, or
the goal is quarterly.
A goal, okay. Yep. That sounds a little more realistic with your family and all.
Yeah, more sustainable.
But do they make an appointment with you, or do they just know you're going to be there? They can just show up and
they know I'm going to be there. And the first time we did it, I think people thought they had to be there or wanted to be there. I'm like, no, that's not the point. It's like, come if you want to, but don't be there. If I always bring a book and a notepad, and if no one's there, then I get some time to sketch out ideas and just kind of decompress. But it's, to your question earlier about being accessible, it kind of accomplishes that, but in a very intentional way of like, hey, the purpose of it is to make sure that I'm available to hear about your career goals. Like sometimes it's hard in the middle of the week when, parts are flying in and out of QA and on and off machines. And this is a time for us to hit pause and just focus on the most important conversation, which is their career goals and how can I help them?
That's brilliant stuff, Travis.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. I probably recycled it from a book I read. I love reading.
Everything we've learned, everything we do is built on the shoulders of giants.
Yep.
Yeah,
brother.
It's the R&D process. Rob and duplicate, right?
Yeah. I've never heard that. I'm totally stealing that. That's great.
I got that from someone else too.
So. That's great. R&D, man.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about training. You mentioned training.
Mm-hmm.
How do you have formalized training processes? Is it how do you train your people?
We've had formal training on and off over the years. It's always evolved to a fault. We have got formal orientation training. We've got a lot of like processes written out. We've had classes. We'll pay to have people come in and take classes on the weekends for inspection and for setup and operator classes. Some of these trainings have kind of come and gone, and that's not a good thing. I think what our future looks like is really needing to, if you think about the 5 S's, or some people say 6 S's, that sustain component of our training hasn't really, we haven't excelled in that. And I think that's an opportunity for improvement that I'll take full responsibility for. And for better or worse, it's really ebbed and flowed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell just from this whole conversation, and I knew this about you before, but you're a very humble person. And I think that serves a leader well.
Thanks for saying that.
Admitting when yeah, we haven't done this well in the past and we need to improve, and it's a priority, and I'm going to make it
There's
happen.
a great book on that, extreme ownership. It's from a Navy SEAL, and it's been inspiring to me. And it's like, hey, if something goes wrong, I got to take responsibility for it. If I'm blaming people, that gives us no hope.
Right.
My job, I take it personally, is to set them up for success. And I'm not always going to do that perfectly, but if I'm not learning and evolving and admitting mistakes, we're doomed. And I hope that it's that culture is permeating our business, and that I know our team adopts it because they'll admit their mistakes and they'll learn from each other's mistakes, which is the best thing in the world. So I'm proud to be part of the team, and it's definitely helped us, give us a competitive advantage over the years.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we're getting close to the end here. If you could kind of summarize, I don't know if this makes any sense, summarize sort of the most sort of key secret to your success over the years, and advice you'd give to, newer, younger shops. What do you think that would look like? What would that be?
I would say it's the people. Earlier I said something like, if it works for McDonald's or Microsoft, it might work here. But there's a lot of companies that I've learned from, and it's about the people, right? Starbucks takes great care of their team. They pay them well. They give them great benefits and lots of empowerment. Chipotle is one that I've looked at a lot over the years. And our team, we live and die by our team and how well we take care of them. And, I think if we do that right, we're going to be successful. So, good question.
Yeah, we're. I love the saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, that's a problem, right? So you really want to hire just incredibly excellent people that are, experts in their domain and just super smart. Because if you're the smartest, everyone's always going to be looking to you for the answers, and that's not sustainable. That's not scalable.
Yeah, it's not going to make you better. And hire great people and get the heck out of their way. So we're working on doing that better and better every day. We don't do the best job at it, but we're getting better at it, and it's helped so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to connect with you, learn more about Jemco, where would they go about doing that?
Jemcoinc.com. That's JEMCO, Inc. like incorporated, inc.com.
Yeah.
Lots of information there, but happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn. And thanks, Paul. Thanks for your time and inviting me on the show. Super happy to be collaborating with you.
Yeah, thanks for dropping so many knowledge bombs. It was, I can tell you're a great leader, and you're the way you speak about your team just says volumes about your character. So,
well, I've learned a lot about that from you, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for all of us.
Absolutely. All right, Travis. Well, thank you, sir. Great talking with you, and we'll see you around.
Okay, sounds good. Take care, Paul.
Yeah.